Hello everybody, Tommy here, back for another edition of Water Invitational content. Today is the first kind of thing that's going to happen week to week, as everything gets underway, and that is the Hype Show. And I'm very excited. I worked on this a little while ago, but I let it sit and simmer for a little bit so that we can talk about it a little bit closer and get everybody excited. So, without further ado, let's get into the Water Invitational Season 3 Hype Show. First of all, thank you to everyone who filled out the survey I put out into the server to give me some data to collect for this so that I can compare it against my own and be a little bit more create a little bit more critical analysis, because without it, I'd just be yapping about my own opinions, which you guys seemingly like a lot, but I wanted to see what the community thought, and there were some things there was kind of consensus on, and some things that there weren't. And so, first question, if you filled out the form, these questions will look a little bit familiar, but for the people who didn't and are seeing this content for the first time, here is kind of what the questions looked like. Question 1, what role do you think was the most stacked? And so, what's going to happen is I'm going to do this, the results, and it's going to show all the results, and it'll show which one I picked. So the most stacked role in the draft, not including the captains, this was a very important distinction. This will apply for both this and the next question. Bot laners were the third most stacked role, according to the poll. Supports were the second most, but I think most people would agree that top lane across the board was probably the most stacked role. It did have 8 players in it because there was no top lane captains. So that probably played into it just that little bit. This is what the graph kind of looked like. There was only top, support, and bottom were selected. And my opinion was, in fact, top, I think, was the most important. Question 2. What role in the draft do you think was the least stacked? And this one was a little bit more consensus, I think. It was third, was the jungle position at 6%. Bottom was 18%. And mid was 76%. I agree, mid was probably the least stacked role. Some of the lowest elo players in the tournament are playing in mid. But that'll make the competition very interesting, I think, within themselves. But we might see a lot of kind of supportive mids or like utilitarian kind of mids, right? Maybe not something in the style TF, which is something you would expect when your mid is a little bit weaker maybe, but something like things that are popping up recently like Morgana or other stuff like that. But I know a lot of these mid laners would like to take an active carry role, right? Frost on Azir, Star on stuff like Aurora, a couple picks like that. Question 3, which player will win MVP? Thank you to everyone who voted. I did have to kind of figure out what everybody meant, because a couple of them were not super clear, but I did get kind of a consensus. So this is going to be everybody who got at least a vote. So Jacob was the number 1 favorite. He had double the vote. So I believe Jacob had 4, Colin had 2. No. Oralstro and Indigo had 2 each. Colin had 3. Jacob had 4. I think Poom and KTL had 1, and those were somewhat serious. And I think Uglarth and Math were 1, and maybe less serious. Not to flame those 2. I love them. I don't know Mac at all, but I love them. But I'm not sure if they were serious. But regardless, they got votes. And so I went through each team and gave who I thought was going to be the team's MVP. And I didn't just pick their best player necessarily. A lot of the time I picked who I think is going to be the most important person when it comes to game day, who's going to need to step up the most. And that more is kind of what my line of thinking was, right? Right. So you'll see from team to team, it'll really vary. Like for example, right, I did pick for Stroh's E-Daters. I did pick Stroh because I think Stroh's a very large hill to climb, that I think he is talented enough to do it, and I think he's basically going to be the only player receiving votes on his team, when his team does pick up wins, if his team does pick up wins, maybe somebody can sneak some away because of a really good carry performance, maybe like a Slayer or Frost in that kind of realm. But I went across the board and kind of picked somebody. So for the Tidecallers, I picked Smize. Smize didn't really get to have a great tournament last time out because of the team they were on really not being up to expectation. So Smize now being paired with Water, I think is going to allow Smize to excel a lot more in their role. So I'm excited to see Smize actually kind of be able to compete this time around. For the FCP, I mean, it's going to all hinge on Jacob. I think Jacob is kind of the odds-on favorite to win MVP, just across the league, generally speaking. And on top of that, I think is the best mid in the tournament. Or is debatably one, because Jacob, I think, has one over Indigo right now. Maybe not in actual solo queue rank, but in general, anytime they matched up, I think Jacob's had the upper hand. I could be completely mistaken on that, and I'm free to be wrong. I'm happy to be wrong, too. For Wizards of the Coast, I think it is going to be Punda. Punda has a lot on his shoulders. He is a 2-time winner. Everything is going to be kind of on him to kind of keep that trend going and see if on a team that's a little bit stronger than what he's traditionally been on, right, and not as a captain, can he really live up to kind of expectation, and can he maybe defeat the narrative that he's not just kind of a off-role support player, and play things to actually elevate his team that are traditional in a sense, because maybe those things will get taken away in the grand scheme of things. I do think Gumi for Herberus is going to be really, really important, because I do think they're going to need a very stable top side for the team to succeed. As you'll see later, a lot of people are very down on Herberus as a whole. So I trust Kaz to get things going sometimes in the bot lane. But I think they need a strong, reliable frontline player, because we're not going to be seeing that out of the jungle. We're not going to be seeing it out of the mid lane, right? We might see it out of the support role, but Gumi is just his bread and butter. We need to see him step up and actually be able to execute on these picks and not be outclassed so heavily by what is a really, really strong top competition, which a lot of people have clearly admitted that it is the strongest role in the tournament. Right, and Gumi's probably perceived as a bottom 2. But Gumi does tend to hold his own pretty well. Loses gracefully, some would say, kind of an impact. The pro player, longtime Team Liquid member. I already talked about Strez Edators. Can't go on 3. I think it's going to be Phil. Phil doesn't play the game at all, but Phil can turn one on when it's asked of him. And when that time comes, I really do expect him to perform. But like I said, he just doesn't play the game. So what kind of form is Phil going to be in the grand scheme of things? And then for Zombier Squad, Albino, right? I talk about this every time I talk to Albino, right? It's just like a little jeering, where he really elevates his game when he's playing up to competition, but it also happens twofold, and why I think part of the reason he gets stuck in lower elos when he was climbing is that he plays down to competition a lot too. And so if he can fix the seesaw kind of going back and forth, right, and keep the good performances against better players, but also elevate his performance against worse players to make sure that he stays ahead of the competition and really can activate his style of gameplay, right? Stuff that likes to run, likes to move, right? TF, Silas, stuff like that can actually get active on the map. Now, this is a very specific question, and note how this is the BO1 phase, right? The first phase of the tournament, right? This is not who do you think is going to win the whole thing. This is which team do you think is going to perform best in best of ones, right? And so here we are. This is the average position, because if you saw the pool, you could order the teams from 1 to 7, and you will see the numbers that are there represent what numbers people put the team in, right? And so the further left, the more frequent it was, right? So the easy one to explain is the FCP. The most common position they were put in to win was first. The second most common position they were put in was second. the third most common position they were put in was third. And I put every single one, right? And so it averages out based on the results. And so our power list, basically, our perceived power list of the best of one stage for the entire server is FCP 1, Tideweavers 2, Sunbear Squad 3, Wizards of the Coast 4, Cancun on 5, Cancun on 3 on 5, Stress Eater 6, and Herber 7, right? And you can see what the variance was, right? It's all about the amount of variance, right? Tideweavers are as high as second, but also as low as sixth, right? Which is really, really interesting, right? And that applies to quite a few teams, right? Wizards of the Coast are like that. Cancun on 3 are also like that, right? Everybody seems to think that the FCP are going to be consensus top 3, basically guaranteed semis, right? Which is very, very interesting. And this is my predicted top to bottom. I do think it's going to be SCP on top, Sunbear Squad 2nd, Wizards of the Coast 3, Tideweavers 4, Stress Eaters 5, Cancun on 3 6, and Herberus, unfortunately, in 7th, because I do just think the champion pool is going to get shut down really, really hard. I do think they'll pick up. I don't think they'll go winless. I think they'll pick up a game, maybe 2. I do think this is going to be a tournament based on the teams. I'm very much expecting kind of right, not a 7-0, 6-1, 5-2, or sorry, 6-0, 5-1, 4-2, 3-3 kind of like really easy to read. It's going to be like multiple teams at 4-2, multiple teams at 3-3, and a couple of teams at 2-4, and it'll be tiebreakers that really determine who's at the bottom. I think that's really how it's going to go. Who do you think the dark horse of the tournament is? And if you're unfamiliar with sports terminology, the dark horse is the team that you think could go on a run that isn't expected to win right now, one of the consensus favorites, right? And so I understand it looks weird that there's 5 teams kind of being here. Cancun on 3 being the 5th dark horse favorite, I think is a little bit strange because I think they are a team that can execute very well. There's a lot of synergy within them. And then Herberus 4, which I think do make sense because they could sleep and really surprise people, and Zenobia could just take over a whole bunch of games in a row. Then we have Sunbear Squad 3. Then we have Stro Eaters 2, which I think is the easy answer. And then Wizards of the Coast, which I found interesting as a dark horse because they're kind of in the middle of the pack, like upper middle of the pack, right? The 3rd, 4th kind of position, which I understand isn't a favorite. But I was looking more like, who do you think is going to be at the bottom, but could make a run? And that's why I picked Stroh's Eaters as, I think, the kind of consensus, like, team that could surprise, right? The lowest ELO team on average, I think, even with Stroh, like, if you were to do LP specifically, I think even with Stroh, they might be the lowest LP team on average. Maybe 2nd or 3rd worst. But I think Stroh actually can elevate his teammates, and as long as he doesn't have brain fog, I think he can really, really run games in this tournament because in my opinion, he's kind of unmatched in this tournament in terms of just raw skill and game knowledge, and shot calling ability in a tournament, right? He has the most experience at a high level, right? And I think that is an X factor that you do have to, like an out of game X factor that you're gonna have to kind of consider. Question number 6. Who do you think is going to win the tournament in the end, right? Who's going to win the final best of 5? And there was kind of 3 teams, I forgot how I did this. It's been a while. So, Sunbear Squad, Wizards of the Coast, and Stroh's Eaters have an equal amount of votes to win. The Tideweavers are the 2nd favorites to win the tournament, but the FCP is the overall favorites to win the whole tournament by kind of a landslide. I'll be honest. I think it was like a whole bunch of votes for the FCP and like 1 or 2 for the 3rd place teams and like 3 or 4 for the 2nd place team. I also think the FCP are probably going to win. I think the team's too stacked, and I think whoever let their draft happen should be shot, basically, is my opinion. So this was one of the questions that I was more interested about, less about the tournament, but like about meta reads and what people have read about and learned about the new season. And I was quite interested to see that I think a lot of you don't know anything about League of Legends. Because I think you guys did not pick the most impactful season overall change by average. Some of you did. But minion gold worth being the 6th most important thing is interesting, right? Because a lot of it got nerfed, right? But a couple of the rules are getting increased gold as the game goes on. Home guard changes. I'll get into why I think this is the most important change later. But it being 5th is disgraceful, in my opinion. New items being number 4, I understand it. New shiny toys, right? I don't actually think a lot of the items are really that good. I think the 80 carry one that's like Hexplate is pretty good, where I think you get like crits on their first couple of autos. But like it's gonna be good on like the champions that it's good on, right? It's gonna be something like Twitch, Yunara, Zeri build, but you're not gonna really see it on a whole bunch of marksmen, right? You're not gonna see MF or Lucian or any of the caster idiots really build it. Maybe you see Ashe build it. Who knows? But we'll see. Right, and the Dusk and Dawn items for on-hit champions only, basically. There's a couple of other fun things littered around. But I do think the support item that gives attack speed to allies is mega broken. The increased tower taking abilities, right, the like kind of the gems building up on towers over time when they're not interacted with, right, making it easier when you like proc it. It's kind of like Demolish, where you proc it and it like blows them all up and you get like 7 bajillion damage on the tower from autoing it once, and I think it's absolutely insane given. The removal of Otacon is really big because it does take away a mid-game objective that grants a lot of experience, right? And because of the removal of Otacon, Baron moving back to 20 minutes, right, which was on the list, but Baron moving back to 20 minutes was not considered a very big deal, right? But you can take Baron at 20 minutes, but you kind of need an ace, right? Otacon, you only need a couple people, and you can kind of force Otacon, right? And it was the focus of a lot of games where games would just get thrown at Otacon either way, right? Either you fought at Otacon, lost the flip from behind, and the game was over, or you fought Otacon, you flipped it, somehow you win the team fight, and the momentum of the game completely swung in your favor, which I think was interesting for the game. And we're not going to say it was healthy or unhealthy. It's not something I particularly enjoyed, right? Because it is just kind of like a second Baron, but it's only a one-time thing. It gives a lot of experience, and as somebody, like, especially if I'm a jungler, right, I've experienced it multiple times today just playing games, where it's, oh, I'm winning, we take, a couple of people got caught out, right as Otacon spawns, they get it, and I hit tab, and my enemy laner is 2 levels above me now, which I think is complete garbage. And then role quests. Well, I do think this is one of the most important things. That I would probably put it. I think I put it second on my own list because I do think it's really important. Everybody's like, "Oh, top laners don't have to take TP anymore." They're going to, right? The people this helps with the most is people who almost by necessity need 2 combat sums, right? Champs like Darius, champs like Dr. Mundo, champs like Camille, right, who they would rather take like Ignite Flash or Ghost Flash, right, and then have teleport, but they can't have teleport, so they're forced to group constantly, right? Now they're going to have the option to do that, right? So a lot of these really aggressive laning champions in top lane are going to be permitted to use a teleport later in the game, but I think people are just going to have 2 TPs and take advantage of it. Right, I really think that's what's going to happen. I think it's just, I don't think it's going to change pro play at all in that regard. I'll be completely honest. I'm happy to be wrong. In fact, I would hope I'm wrong. Jungle basically got nothing, but thank God that role's OP. Mid laners, I think, got the short end of the stick. I do think their role is strong, but I don't think a boots upgrade is conducive to the power of all the other roles. AD carry is getting 7 items, I think, is really OP. Because games are going to slow down, because to end the game is going to be a lot more difficult, I think. Like, people are going to be getting more gold in the early game, but less in the mid game. And so, I do think AD carries getting 7 items is really strong. But I don't think it's as OP as people think it's going to be, because I don't think they're going to hit that very often, right? Games are going to end before they get to 7 items, right? It's more so it lets you build more components, right? So you're not 3 items in plus boots, and you can only build 1/2 of your LDR, or 1/2 of your shield bow components, or whatever items you're building, right? I think is just the nice part that you'll actually be able to spend your gold in the mid to late game, on components so that you're spiking a little bit more, right? Because AD carries specifically really only spike. They don't really spike on components, right? Outside of like champions that build Dirk, right, for collector, or champions that build multiple BF swords. A lot of them, or they just spike on boots even, right? It's like Yasuo or Zeri or something like that, right? But a lot of AD spike on full item completions, right? Because the components are pretty horrible across the board for AD carries. So I really, really hope that people realize that AD carry is not going to be mega OP now. It's just going to be a little bit better, right? If you get to the 40-minute point of the game where they actually have 6 full items, right? They get 4 crit items, their QSS, and some sort of vamping item, right? BT or Maw or whatever it is, right? That they actually get to like live at the power fantasy of it, right? Which I think is great, because I do think the AD carry role is kind of been neglected, right? Giant Slayer being back, I think it's really, really important. I believe it's back at least. And supports get nothing, and I think that's deserved, to be completely honest. But as I alluded to earlier, home guard changes are so broken. The game is gonna you are gonna be in lane more, right? You can take a lot more aggressive trades, right? You can get better recalls. You can recall like the amount of MS you get like almost all the way back to lane with home guards now. It's completely ridiculous. Your entire like perception of the game and how quickly people are going to be able to get back to lane is going to be completely thrown off for the first month of the season. I guarantee it. You're going to be like, oh, this person can't be back yet, and like you've pushed like a wave and a half, and they're back. And you're like, how is that even possible? They just died. It's going to be an adjustment, right? Just like it was last time the home guard changes at the beginning of this year when the home guard changes happened. It's going to happen. It's going to continue to happen. You're going to make mental mistakes because you're conditioned to the frequency of it already, right? It's actually better for new players because they don't have old habits to fall back onto, right? I guarantee you it's going to happen. It's going to happen in pro, and everybody's going to be like, why did you overstay, right? Why did you fuck up your wave state? And it's going to be because of the home guard changes, right? And people coming back to lane quicker than they realize. Question number 8. What do you guys think the highest presence champ is going to be? This was a very open-ended question, right? You could have literally said any champion in the game, or you could have given me a theme of champion, which some people did, right? One of the big presence things was on-hit champs, right? And but they just said on-hit, right? So I couldn't necessarily say a champ. But here are the top 5 listed by name. Xin Zhao, I think, is very, very interesting, because, I mean, his ultimate is just so impactful, right? It's the whole, like, Gwen thing, but on an ultimate. I think Xin Zhao is still okay. I don't think he's amazing. But I think none of his items are really getting touched at the beginning of the season, so we'll see. Yone, I think, is a really good shout, because Yone is going to be a champion quite a few players go on to. I don't think a lot of them are top laners play. I think a couple of them do, but I don't expect to see a lot of it in the top lane. Maybe if they're trying to ego somebody else, they might. But I could see Indigo playing this. I could see Sunbear playing this. Lil W. I could see Jacob playing this as well. I think Yone is definitely something to keep an eye on for. Rise, I think this champion's mega broken right now. I've seen this champion on like 2 items does way too much damage, and on death cap it's ridiculous, and I think should be put in rune prison himself. Give me the scrolls Rise because they're broken. I think that champ is disgusting, and I think it should be pick or ban currently, honest to god. Maybe not actually, but I think it feels really, really gross, and if it's into a comp that it actually might succeed against, Rise is broken. Silas up there. Silas being able to flex into multiple roles, right, with his jungle buffs, right? So now you might see that champion in jungle from a couple of our more desperate teams to pick up some wins. You might see this. You'll see this in mid for sure, right? We have a couple of really, really good Silas players, right? We have some people who like inting a little too much, who might play this in the support role. And you might see top lane, who knows? Maybe I could see it happening. So I could genuinely see Silas being played in 4 roles this tournament, because of just how great this champion is, and I want it shot in the head. Thank you. The number 1 pick I alluded to earlier, on-hit champions, Varus, kind of one of the OG kings of on-hit. I couldn't find a modern image of Varus's model, like everybody else, for whatever reason. So you get an old version. I think Varus, with his build versatility, AD, AP, on-hit, poke, all that good jazz, I think that allows him to really succeed, have a lot of different places that he can play, right? And I think could put in a lot of work, and there's quite a few good Varus players in the tournament, right? Water, Jake, KTL, right? All really insanely good Varus players. And so I expect Varus to be really high presence, just as a comfort pick. I also think Varus will be really high prio. So, what is everybody's average hype level for Water Invitational 3? It's our 3rd time around. Maybe people are getting bored of it. I was just getting a little bit of a feel, right? And it was 7.8 out of 10, and I put a little funny joke there. Oh, but my camera's in the way. There's basically too much water in this invitational. And if you don't understand that reference, unlucky. Alright, and then the question 10, we're kind of close to wrapping it up now. What kind of content would you like to see? Is something that I wanted to ask everybody, because I do think that actually putting out content that people want to watch is important, instead of just throwing out slop. Like, I don't want to put time into something that people won't enjoy. So my goal is to actually provide you guys content for something that's completely meaningless, so that I can have my fun with this tournament, because I don't get to play. Because I have a life and work, and my job sucks, and how would I? True. So I'm going to go through a couple of the requests here, and so I can give you my reactions to them when I saw them come through on the form. Water Invitational OnlyFans. Probably not going to happen, but if you want a few picks, DM me. That can be arranged. A hot dog eating contest. I'm sure that could happen. A packet of hot dogs is not that expensive. I'd be down. I think we could maybe facilitate that if we had enough interested parties to actually partake. A Feldy back take list is not going to happen. Because I won't let it, because the only person's bad takes we're going to hear are mine. And here are some of the actual ones that I think we might actually do. Power rankings, that's which we're kind of going to do a little bit later to end the video. Is going to happen. It'll happen maybe after every match day, maybe after every week. Who knows? We will see. Matchup analysis. I do hope to maybe get some matchup analysis done, so that I can look into the games a little bit more deeply, right? I would be very appreciative. Maybe we'll get like a VOD box going, so that everybody can watch the VODs of other teams, right? Because not every game is going to get streamed, obviously. So we're going to do our maybe we do our best to kind of get a VOD system going, so that everybody can watch, and I put it up on this channel, so that everybody can watch VODs, maybe with or without commentary. We'll see. And then more interviews. I'm totally down to do more interviews. If anybody wants to reach on, toss out an interview to do some smack talk, kind of like WWE style, right? Just call people out, stuff like that, or do that kind of stuff, create a little bit of drama. I'm more than happy to facilitate that, set up interviews for that kind of stuff. And then here's the last thing. And genuinely, I couldn't believe it when I saw it, and this is not an ego thing. This is, I'm not power tripping. This is 100% real. And I couldn't believe it, and I am so thankful and grateful that you guys have liked all the content so far, because it is quite literally just me yapping. People ask me to yap, and here's some proof. Tommy yapping, basically. Tommy yap, verbatim. Yap session from Tommy. These are all real things from the poll. I kid you not. I wouldn't make this up. I'm not 3 different anonymous people to make this up. That would be cringe. So here are some content ideas that I had that I would like people to talk to me about and see if they're actually interested in, right? Like, interested in seeing, right? And if there's something you see here that you're interested in or you'd like to participate in yourself, let me know and we can get that maybe off the ground. Rotating Game Mode podcast, right, where I just record us yapping and talking about Water Invitational with some people while we play Arena or ARAM or something. Right, you'll be forced to endure my POV, unfortunately. But maybe you get to look at a pretty skin that you don't own, because I own, like, all the skins, because I'm a cow. True. Anyways, next one, game shows, right? Like a Jeopardy, or maybe a Family Feud styled game show. Anything I'm down for. If you give me an idea, I can help set it up, right? Elite themed game shows, or if you guys just want like a regular ass game shows so that you can make fun of people for being dumb, I'm more than welcome to the idea of running that with Water Invitational participants. Stats, doing some sort of stat page, right? If we could do something where we just gather all the data in one place, right? Who's doing the most damage, yada yada yada. Could be fun. I would be more than willing to help get that off the ground. I'm not a great spreadsheet person, but having it all in one place will make it easier for me to do reviews. So I'm more than willing to do that if people are interested. Pick'ems. I could maybe throw together some sort of pick'em competition, right? And just purely for bragging rights, or maybe I'll put up like, I don't know, $25 a gift card on the line for everybody for the best overall pick'ems, right? And we do pick'ems every single week, and there's a leaderboard, right? Everybody would submit their pick'ems to me before the match week starts, right? Don't match fix. It wouldn't be fun if you did that. That'd be cringe. Or maybe you just wouldn't be allowed to vote on your own game. That would make sense. Anyways, yeah, I could throw together a pick'ems of sorts if people were interested to try to predict everybody else's games and then go from there. And then a week in a review. After each match week, going over games, that's totally going to happen. That is my plan. I hope to get that accomplished because it is something that I feel like that's the bare minimum that I want to do. Is after each match week, maybe if I can get access to VODs, it'd be great. But if not, just go over the screens, and if it was on stream, maybe go over a little bit of it and talk about what happened. If any of that tickles your fancy, I'm in the Discord or DM me. My DM should be open. You can add me as a friend if that's a requirement for it. If it garners enough interest, I'll get started on it, and it'll happen. And with that being said, it's time for the main event. The Week 0 power rankings, right? The relative strength of all the teams in comparison to one another, right? This is the grand reveal of the main analyst of Water Invitational, if I don't say so myself. This is the power rankings. Everybody is the same tier because no one's played a game yet. And power rankings require games to be played. Okay? This is not a tier list. This is a power rankings, right? Next week, it won't be, oh, these teams 2-0'd and these teams 1-0-2, so they're at the top of the bottom. If you won 0-2, but you played the two teams that went 2-0, then you're probably not going to be at the bottom of the list. Okay? So, with that being said, everyone is in the uh-oh tier. Because no one's rosters are finalized, and I've been hearing some funny things. There could be some dropouts, there could be some dodging, there could be some interesting things happen between now and the rest of the week. There's a lot of time for things to go wrong, folks. And time is not your friend. It's no one's friend, because it comes for us in the end. With that being said, thank you for watching. Thank you for keeping up with me. Thank you for enjoying the content, leaving lots and lots of support to me, whether it's in DMs or to my face. It's very, very much appreciated. I hope you guys, again, enjoyed today's content. I hope the mic balancing is a little bit better today. Please let me know if things are still ass. I will fix it. But with that being said, happy Water Invitational. Happy New Year. Happy holidays to everybody. I hope everyone stays happy, healthy, and warm. And I'll catch you next time.